Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another one of Avant-Garde Trading's free educational trading webinars. We are thrilled to have you here this afternoon as we are hosting Brandon Karpeles, and he is here to talk with everyone for part one of a three-part series that we're doing on Bitcoin education. Now, Brandon is the Chief Executive Officer at Sovereign, which is the Bitcoin consulting company, and he has an interesting bio here. He spent about 19 years in commercial banking, and almost all of it was spent handling distressed assets, companies, and individuals. So he would dig deep into all areas of the business, from the day-to-day management to business production cycles to personnel management. Now he aims to use all of those skills to help businesses understand Bitcoin and ultimately integrate it into their operations. We are thrilled to have Brandon with us this afternoon. Brandon, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for joining us this afternoon and for putting together this three-part series. We're excited to kick it off this afternoon with part one: what is money and why is Bitcoin money? This is very exciting for us. I think it's a great pertinent question, and hopefully I have no doubts it will aim to alleviate a lot of potential confusion that people might have if they're initially sort of getting into the world of Bitcoin and trying to figure it out. So we're thrilled to have you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you for putting this on. This is certainly a topic that is on a lot of people's radar these days, certainly much more than even last year or the year before, or many of the years I've been involved with Bitcoin. So thank you for putting this together. I hope people will get a lot out of this, and I'm going to. I'll probably go through all of this and circle back into the um, the the chat at the end of this, and then we can answer some questions there as people might have it. So I'm going to
Yes, that
start.
sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to start sharing my presentation here. And
Please do. And just a reminder for everyone live while Brandon's pulling up his presentation, if you have questions during his presentation, please type them into the chat box or the Q&A box. And as Brandon mentioned, I'll make sure to keep track of those and we'll address them at the end live. All right. Okay, Brandon, I can see your screen.
all right.
And looks good.
Awesome.
Take it away.
Okay. So will do. So the title of this entire series is Understanding Bitcoin and Money, and why Bitcoin is the future of money. And we put this picture up to start the presentation, one, because it's beautiful art, but also it's titled "The Gold Transportation in 19th Century Siberia." So this is we have a little better security now transporting gold, but you still have to put it on a ship. You have to send it across potential oceans or land, and while we probably have um, less risk of being robbed and having it stolen, it's still a lot of logistics and legwork and labor that has to get paid, and was a big reason why gold initially failed, or eventually failed rather, as money. And it was as commerce became more global, moving the settlement asset around, which was gold, became more and more difficult. And so we'll touch on that there, but just thought it was a nice picture to highlight. It looks pretty cold out there, and you got well-armed people on horses moving as fast as they can to limit sort of their points of attack, and it just highlights sort of the antiquated notion of something like gold as a settlement money, but between nations and global commerce. So just really like that slide and wanted to share a little bit of the history and the idea behind that. So um, what we're going to try to do here over the next 3 weeks is understand the evolution and principles of money. Um, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is just money. And part two of this will be a lot more of the technical part of it. But really, what we want to focus in on, hone in on, and pound home is that Bitcoin is money. It's not a stock, it's not real estate, It's not an asset in terms of the sort of tradition. It's not a speculative asset, I should say, rather. And it's not. It doesn't have cash flow. There is no yield. It is truly the money. It is the equivalent of holding US dollars and not holding a treasury, not holding some sort of derivative, not holding exposure to the S&P 500. And we're really going to focus on what makes good money, what are the properties of money as opposed to properties of stocks, bonds, investments, and these other things. So, and then certainly going to learn what Bitcoin is and why it matters. Why is it so important? Why is this thing that had a white paper created 16 years ago? Why has it gone from a penny market cap to over 2.5 or almost $2.5 trillion in market cap? Probably as of today, I think we were over 2.5 trillion earlier this month. But and then the last part of this is really going to be what are the benefits of Bitcoin as a new form of money, and how can you, as financial advisors to businesses, to individuals, or even just in your own personal life, how can you really take advantage of the sea change that is going on now? That as we've been off the gold standard from 1971 and entered into a true monetary regime or fiat monetary regime, what does that mean for the next decade, the next 2 decades? And why will you benefit by switching your money over to the better money? And so the picture here, you can see an old claim on for $1, and this was issued by the state of New Hampshire. They didn't even have federal money back then. So just another cool little artifact from the past there. So let's start with what is Bitcoin? As I alluded to earlier, that Bitcoin at the end of the day is just money. Now, Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency that uses blockchain technology to record a fully comprehensive ledger. And I'm sure some of you are sitting there and that sounds like a lot of jargon and that may sound confusing. But at the end of the day, all blockchain technology is, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call have heard, blockchain, not Bitcoin, or the future is going to be built on blockchain, or we're going to tokenize everything and put it on the blockchain. But the blockchain actually has no use other than the enforcement of the ledger of an asset that sits on top of it, of a money that sits on top of it. So blockchain is just a fancy word for database at the end of the day. And the Bitcoin blockchain, while quicker than settlement networks like ACH or FedWire or the actual Federal Reserve settlement network, which most people don't know this, but when you transfer money between institutions or pay with a credit card, that money doesn't actually settle for around 45 to 60 days. And when we say settle, we mean that it's final, that you can't claw it back, you can't have chargebacks, you can't reverse the transaction. And this is a feature of Bitcoin, not a bug. It's every 10 minutes, roughly, you get settlement. And that is recorded in the blockchain. And without getting too technical, that is the point of the blockchain. We'll talk more about some of the technical characteristics next week. If you want to get into the specifics behind why it's called blockchain and how that enforces itself. At the end of the day, this database that has recorded every single Bitcoin transaction that's ever happened, it's decentralized because it's stored on a network of nodes. So I personally run a Bitcoin node at my home. Any individual with an old laptop or a Raspberry Pi or something like this can run a node. And those nodes are spread across the globe. They're in the United States, they're in Australia, they're in Africa, they're in Europe. Pick your continent, pick your nation. Someone there is running a Bitcoin node, and that's why it has value is because it is not centralized at the Federal Reserve or the ECB or pick your central bank. That there is no small group of people in charge of the ledger that can change it or make adjustments to it or create new units. It is enforced by individuals running software or institutions running software spread across the world, building consensus, not building consensus, defining consensus in terms of what actually transactions have happened on the blockchain. So, to that extent, the sort of end all be all of Bitcoin, at the end of the day, why Bitcoin has any value is its fixed supply. As many of you, I'm sure, have noticed, the dollar's supply is not very fixed. In fact, it's not fixed at all. And they can create new units of dollars anytime they feel like it, or euros, or yen, or pick your fiat currency. And so Bitcoin's value derives from the fact that there will only be 21 billion coins. And again, we can get into a little more of this in part two as we get into the technical details of Bitcoin. However, um, this is the software that all of the nodes are running. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is open source software. The nodes, as I talked about earlier, the decentralized ledger, all have 21 million as the max amount of coins that can ever exist. If you try to change this part of the software, you are no longer a part of the Bitcoin network. You would have entered into what's called a hard fork and actually created your own new network. And there's all sorts of these hard forks out there in the history of Bitcoin. So you can change the supply to 22 million, you can change it to 42 million, you can change it to 210 million, but you are no longer running the Bitcoin software. You have created something different, and that is the enforcement mechanism. I get asked all the time, well, what if Satoshi comes back, the guy who invented Bitcoin, and can he just change the supply? Well, sure, he could, but now he's running something that's not Bitcoin, and he needs other people to join his network to run the same software that says there's going to be more than 21 million. And of course, no one wants to do that because it devalues their coins because their portion of the network is not as scarce. So this really is the critical piece of Bitcoin, and sort of if I'm ever asked to give an elevator pitch about Bitcoin, it's that there's a finite supply amount of Bitcoin and an infinite supply of dollars. So the rest of the stuff we can learn, we can get into the technical aspects of it, how that's credibly enforced. But if I were to present to you the value proposition, would you like a money that had a fixed supply and you knew exactly how many there were going to be and when they were going to be distributed into the supply? Or would you like an infinite supply of money that you have no idea when more units are going to be created or taken out of the system, and how many there will ultimately be? I think everyone would choose the one where they knew the issuance schedule and the amount of coins or units of currency in circulation. So the second part of the key features of Bitcoin is that it's secured by proof of work, mining, and cryptography. And again, these may sound like technical terms. Cryptography, at the end of the day, is just the same thing that secures your email password, the same thing that secures any online account you're logging into, and the person running the website doesn't know it. It's end-to-end encrypted, and only you know the password, and the cryptography prevents anyone else from seeing it. That is the same concept with the Bitcoin network, is that it uses cryptography to do its mining. And again, I'm going to try to sort of stay at the 30,000 foot view here. But what we mean by proof of work mining is that you actually have to go expend real world energy. You have to go plug in, they're called ASICs. Back in the day, you could just do it on a laptop. Those were CPUs. And then eventually it moved to CGUs, which were graphics computers, which had a little more compute power. And now we've gotten to the point where so many people are trying to mine Bitcoin that you have to have specialized machines. Um, that all they do is Bitcoin mining. And technically, the word is hashing. They are performing a hashing function to try to mine the coins. And as I said, what we mean by proof of work is you just need energy to do that. You have to go source electricity from somewhere. You can't just update the database yourself. So you've heard of a lot of these other coins. Probably, and they don't have proof of work. They have what's called proof of stake, where it's if you own a larger portion of the network, you can vote new coins into existence, or you can vote transactions out of the history of the coin. And Bitcoin doesn't allow you to do that. You have to go spend real world energy to bring the coins into existence, and ultimately it's secured by SHA 256 or SHA 256 cryptography. And so we can get more into that next time, but that's why it's so important, is for the why Bitcoin has the value it does is that you have to go expend energy to get it. You can't just have a larger portion of the network and control who owns what and who gets to transact, even more importantly, on the network. And lastly, we talked a little bit about this before, but it is a transparent and immutable ledger. So anyone can see every Bitcoin at all time, what address it is tied to. And as the blocks proliferate and more are added to the blockchain, it becomes unchangeable. You cannot go back and reverse it. And so when you get that settlement, when you get that finality every roughly 10 minutes, you know that the transaction cannot be changed. It cannot be altered. And at no point are you going to wake up sometime in the future and all of a sudden a bunch of transactions that were deemed valid put into the blockchain, put into the ledger. Has someone changed it? It's impossible to change. You cannot undo it. Um, so that was a little bit of overview of Bitcoin and the technical properties of it that make it valuable as money. And so here I just want to talk a little bit about the evolution of money and how we got to where we are today. So initially we started with the barter system, and that was just as simple as you have cows, I have bananas, we need to make something happen here. And that works okay for very small communities and assuming that the other person has something you want. But if you're trying to barter with someone and they don't want your bananas, well, now, they tell you, well, I want apples. And you say, okay, well, now I got to go find someone to accept my bananas for apples. And then I can give you the apples and then I can get a piece of your cow. And it just adds a layer of complexity, that layer, many layers of complexity potentially. And there's just no way to coordinate economic trade very well under that system. And eventually, we moved into commodity money, things like gold and silver. There's been all sorts of different forms of commodity money over the years, even copper, nickel, other things. Anything that was scarce, hard to find, and didn't deteriorate due to weather or conditions around you, and you could hold on to it and have it into the future to know that you could buy things later. And really, gold has won this battle in terms of commodity money. It's the most scarce, it's the most durable, it's the most accepted. I shouldn't say it's the most scarce, actually. There are more scarce metals out there than gold, platinum, for example. But it developed a network effect as money, and we have sort of settled on gold. It increases its supply at roughly 2% every year, which is why it holds its purchasing power into the future. And silver, while not as scarce as gold, holds its purchasing power better than things like fiat money, which is the next one on here, but still worse than gold. And that is kind of how gold emerged as the chosen money for people to settle with for many, many centuries, thousands of years, millennia, really. And it's only recently have we moved into this aberration of money, where we have what's called fiat money. And really, it started in with the Bank of England. It came to the United States in prevalence with the founding of the Federal Reserve in 1913. And we had some loose ties to gold and agreements with other nations that our currency would be tethered to gold and backed by gold. But at the end of the day, we were issuing more dollars than we had gold. And that was the beginning of fiat money. Was we created this money and we said it's money, but we said you could come redeem it for gold. Well, in 1971, that all went out the window. And some people on this call may remember Nixon getting on the TV and informing the world that we are suspending the redeemability of the US dollar for gold. And what that entered was an era of complete fiat money, that it was just money that the government issued by decree. Fiat literally means by decree. And the money was declared money because, well, the government said it was money. There was no value behind it. It was the quote unquote good faith and credit of the US government. Well, what's the good faith and credit of the US government? Well, their ability to print more money to pay you back. And we entered into a system where the government, in conjunction with the Federal Reserve, and this is government, and I'm speaking from a U.S. standpoint, but this is governments all around the world, central banks. So whether it's the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Central Bank of Japan, the Central Bank of, Australia, pick your nation that has a central bank. They were in charge of issuing the money, however much or however little they wanted, and setting interest rates, and that obviously became a massive problem, as we've all seen, in terms of debt that's never going to be able to repaid, deficit spending on very unaffordable wars and other things that we got no value out of. Arguably, we destroyed value, and it allowed governments to steal from their citizens via inflation to fund themselves and do whatever they deem to be in their best interest, maybe not in the best interest of their citizens. And the founder of Bitcoin, the originator of the white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto, knew this, and he specifically, in the first block that was ever issued, he added a piece of information to the blockchain that sits there forever, and you can go back and look at it. It's called the Genesis block, the first block. Um, and it's the headline of the London Times, and it says Chancellor on the brink of bailouts. And it was a direct reference to the 2008 2009 banking crisis that resulted in the need for bailouts of financial institutions. And that's where Bitcoin was born, was a direct open source, decentralized, immutable ledger response to the fiat money era we had been in for 46 years at that time. So, what are the attributes of sound money? And I'm going to go through this kind of quickly because I do want to get to some questions, and I know we have a half hour. So, a lot of people say, well, okay, Bitcoin is money, but why isn't gold money? And at the end of the day, money, it has is just something, is one side of every economic transaction, and it's just something people hold to exchange for goods and services at a later date. And so that money could be anything. It could be tobacco leaves, it could be gold, it could be iPhones. But what ultimately ends up settling on the choice for money is because it has the best attributes for money. And so those attributes are scarcity. So there's a limited supply. It can't be, part of the reason silver isn't as good of money as gold is it's easier to mine silver. So as the price of silver goes up, you can go get more silver very easily. It's harder to get gold. And Bitcoin is the scarcest of all time. It is a literal fixed supply. It doesn't matter what the price of Bitcoin goes to. You can't go dig up any more Bitcoin or find any more. Durability. We talked about this at the beginning. So while gold was great in terms of durability, it was hard to to break. You would have to get it to very high heat to melt it down. It probably wasn't going to go away in a fire. And um, Bitcoin is completely digital, and so it has incredible durability because of its digital nature. There is no way to destroy Bitcoin. So, portability, we talked about that in the beginning slide. Easy to transfer and carry. Obviously, gold is very difficult to transfer and carry. And Bitcoin, you can send over the internet to anyone, anywhere in the world, anytime, and get final settlement in 10 minutes. It's the most portable form of money we've ever seen. And divisibility. So just like the dollar has pennies, every Bitcoin has what are called Satoshis, and each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million of these Satoshis, just like the dollar is divisible into 100 pennies. A Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million smaller units called Satoshis. And then it's fungible. So, a dollar from 1974 is the same worth as a dollar from 1999. Not literally, its purchasing power has declined, but you can give that dollar to a store clerk today, and the store clerk doesn't care if it was minted in Denver or minted in San Francisco or what year it was made. That the $1 equals $1, and that is true with Bitcoin. So any unit of Bitcoin is exactly equal to any other unit of Bitcoin. And you could even argue actually that $1 may not equal $1 because there's collector's values and scarcity to some dollars over others, but none of that exists on Bitcoin. It's purely one for one. So I raced through this part a little bit, but I did want to get to some questions, and so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, hop back in the chat, and maybe answer some questions.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Yeah, if you want to put anything back up on the screen just to reference, feel free to do that. And also, I want to ask you to, I don't know if you have it written or if you want to just say it out loud, to put any contact information for you if people want to reach out after the fact with questions to get more. I know this is a 3-part series, of course, and we're going to meet again the next 2 weeks to get deeper into it. But it'd be great for people to have your info if they want to reach out directly.
Yeah, I will. It's B Karpeles, so you can see my name on here. B, my last name. It's Sovereign without the first E, so it's SOVREIGN.io. And that's the website as well, sovereign.io.
Thank you so much. And I just typed that into the chat for everyone
you.
in the Zoom room with us, so you all can just kind of grab that, copy and paste. Like Brandon said, if you have any questions on part 1, what he just went through, now is the time. Type them in the chat or the Q&A box. Brandon, one question that we get, just talking about Bitcoin, this first part, why is Bitcoin money? How, in your opinion, do you explain or help answer the question of, if Bitcoin is money, why don't I see it being exchanged everywhere in the stores and everything day to day?
Sure. So the reality is we're just very early. And, it took thousands of years for gold to become money. And we're in year 16 of Bitcoin becoming money. So you think about the US dollar, the US dollar didn't even exist until the, later 1800s. So new forms of money come along all the time. And this is just a new form of money. However, it's perfect money, and people just haven't figured that out yet. And we have, you as an individual, you as a business, have an incredible asymmetric opportunity to realize the properties of Bitcoin as money ahead of a lot of the rest of society. And the fact is, we're just very, very early in adoption. And I'm sure some people on here remember the first time they heard about email, or someone told them about email, and they probably thought that was crazy too. Now, if you don't have 4 email addresses, you're considered a Luddite and seem antiquated. So the reality is we're just early. More content like this needs to come out to help educate people about what's going on, about our current monetary system and the the transition that eventually will take place. And I don't know how long or what the timeline is, but because of the properties of Bitcoin as money, it will displace all the current other monies of the world because it just has such better qualities than the rest of them. And we're just early.
Fascinating. Yeah, thank you for that. There's, as I was pointing out before, that's why I wanted to share contact info. More often than not, people will come up with questions, later this evening, the next day. So I'm glad everyone's got your email and the website as well. And as a reminder, everyone, if you come up with questions later and you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked this, shoot them over to Brandon. If you don't remember to do that, you can always just jot them down and remember to ask them next week when we have him back for part 2 of this series. And I'm just going to highlight our website right now, avantgardetrading.com. If you haven't already signed up for part 2, go ahead and do that. Okay, just register with the big blue button on Zoom. Takes 2 seconds, and you'll make sure that even if you can't attend live next Tuesday at noon, you'll make sure to get the recorded replay, as we are recording all of these sessions for you all. We definitely want to make sure that you follow along with this 3-part series because, as Brandon mentioned, he's touching on a lot of information and trying to condense it all and make it palatable for everyone here, which we really do appreciate.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, please reach out. I'm happy to talk with you. I'm happy to get on a call with you. I know sometimes, questions are longer than just a quick type in a chat, and maybe you want some more
Right.
more depth and understanding into some of these issues. Please reach out. I'm always happy to hop on a call. We can go through this stuff. I guarantee if you have questions, I already had all these questions. Is I've gone along on this journey of understanding Bitcoin, and so it's a lot to digest. It's a ton to take in, but I learned a lot from other people and asking them questions and them helping me work through a lot of things. So would love to do the same for anyone else in the same position. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. That's awesome. That's amazing. And you know what? That's one thing maybe we can think about for the next 2 presentations. What's some of the most frequently asked questions that you receive, or what are some of the most pertinent questions you asked when you were diving deep into the Bitcoin education journey? That I'm sure, as you pointed out, most of our audience would have similar questions, and it's hard to know even what to ask when you're just starting getting into this, right? So yeah,
Yes.
that'd be something good.
It's a ton of information. A lot of it can seem overwhelming, but sometimes even just being one-on-one or outside a group and distilling your thoughts and like, okay, now I have a direct contact point. I feel a lot more comfortable than sort of just, okay, move from this question to that question, moving on. So yeah, I
Right.
encourage people to please reach
Absolutely.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do that, y'all. Thank you again, Brandon. Really do appreciate the time. Thanks for everyone for joining us live. And for those of you who will watch this on the recording, thanks for watching it. Like I said, don't forget to sign up for part 2. It's next week, October 28th at noon. Go to our website, click the big blue register for webinar button, and make sure you get on that list.
Thank you.
Otherwise,
Thank you
we
so
will
much
see
for
you at the
having me.
next one.
Yep.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. We'll see you at the
Thank
next
you.
one.
Okay.